Hello everyone. Today we're going to jump ahead past 2.1. We'll come back to it later, and we're going to start the second unit at 2.2, or rounding. As you can see on the screen, it says rounding, replacing one number for another number that tells about how many or how much. So we are not getting an exact answer, we're getting a number that's close to the exact number. It's a form of estimating. It is used when you want to get an easier number to work with so you can do mental math. In other words, this is a strategy that you'll want to use in order to see if your answers are correct by checking your answers, or in real life situations when you go to the store and you're buying something and you have a certain amount of money and you want to know if the things that you're buying are within the amount that you have. You don't want to sit down and put it on a piece of paper or use a calculator. You just do estimations in your head by making the numbers simpler, and that's what we're going to do here. And the way we find a simpler number is by finding a number that's close to the number that we're talking about, but is a lot easier to work with. So up on your screen I put a number line so you can see visually that with your eyes you can see what this is all about. So first, let's look at this number here, 3.27. And really, when you're rounding, you're looking for a number that it's close to that works well for calculating. So in this case, we have 3 and 27 hundredths. And we want to see if it's closer to 3 and 20 hundredths or 3 and 30 hundredths. So if I highlight this area here, it's quite easy to see that it is closest to 3 and 30 hundredths. And so let me draw a line so we can see it another way. So if I was to draw a line here, it is quite obvious that that is closer to 3 and 30 hundredths than to 3 and 20 hundredths. So I would use 3 and 30 hundredths in order to do that. Okay, so let's look at another number. So let's go down here to 3 and 23 hundredths. If you wanted an easier number, we would look at this number line and we would see that, again, this is closer to 3 and 20 hundredths. And if I draw a line between the two, you'll see this again, that it is much closer to 3 and 20 hundredths than it is to 3 and 30 hundredths. So that's what I would use in my rounding. The problem comes is when we get to the middle. So in the middle, you can see if I draw a line between the two, it is exactly in the middle. So it's a little harder to decide which it's closer to. So to help us out with rounding, there have been some rules that have been made. So if we get in a situation like this, we can decide what to do. So let's go to the next page. Okay, so let's go to the next page and look at these rules. Okay, so the rounding rules, as we went over in class, what I'm reviewing here, is to see if the digit to the right of the rounding number, and I'm going to underline the rounding digit, is equal to or greater than 5. If it is, add 1 to the rounding number. Okay. The second one, see if the digit to the right of the rounding number digit or number, digit and number are the same thing, is less than 5. If it is, leave the rounding number alone. Okay, and then at the end you're going to clean up, either change the numbers after the rounding digit to 0 or drop them altogether. Okay, so I just read through the rules, and so now we're going to use them. And the reason I'm underlining rounding digit is because that's exactly what I want you to do when you look at the digit that you're rounding. So let's look down here. So this one says round to the nearest hundredth. Well, the very first thing that I need to do is to find out what number is in the hundredths. And if we come over from the decimal, we know the first place value is the tenth, and the second one is the hundredth. So I'm going to underline that number to remind myself that that is the rounding number. And then I'm going to draw a little arrow over here so I know what number to focus on so I don't get confused. So when I look at that number, this is the number that's to the right of the rounding number. So let's go to rule 1. See if the digit to the right of the rounding digit is equal to or greater than 5. So let's look at it. It's 6. So that is higher than 5. If it is, add 1 to the rounding number. Okay, so we've decided that number 1 rule is the one that works, so we're not going to do any more. Instead, we're just going to go 4.2, and we're going to add 1 to the 8, and then that becomes 4.29. Now, if I wanted to, I could also put a 0 there if I wanted to see what it looked like with that number changed to a 0. Again, these are two numbers that are equivalent or the same. All right, so let's go to another number. Okay, so again, we're going to go to the rounding digit first, and we're going to underline it. So on this one, it says round to the nearest tenth. Well, if I go to the decimal, I know that the first value next to the decimal is a tenth, is the 10th value. And so I can immediately underline the 10th value. Okay, that is the rounding number. So let's go back up here. See if the digit to the right of the rounding digit is equal to or greater than 5. Okay, let's draw an arrow over here and see what we find. And we find that it's a 4. So it's not greater than 5. So I'm going to go to number 2. See if the digit to the right of the rounding digit is less than 5. So I look here and I see this 4, and I know 4 is less than 5. So let's go back and see what I'm supposed to do. If it is, leave the rounding number alone. Okay, so the rounding number again is the underlined one, so I'm not going to add anything to it. Instead, I'm going to rewrite it like this. 3.2, or an equivalent decimal would be 3 20/100ths. They mean the same thing, so you can either drop it off or leave the 0 on there for the number that you changed. That's what we mean by cleanup. So either change the number after the rounding digit to 0 or drop them. So these rules help us when we're trying to decide what to round to, because if we don't have a number line, it may be hard to see. So now I'm going to get you to try some on your own. So the first one, and you can stop this and try it on your own, and then turn it back on to see what the answer is. But here we have 62 18/100ths. And the instructions are to round to the nearest one. So, first of all, the ones place we know is to the left of the decimal. So I'm going to underline that. And then I'm going to draw an arrow to the next number. So go ahead and pause it right now and see if you can round it, and then start it over again. Start it back up so you can see if you got the correct answer or not. Go! Okay, so we're back. I know from the first rule, if I look over here and this number is less than 5, is not greater than 5, I'm going to skip the number 1 rule altogether. I'm going to go to the second rule. If the second number is less than 5, then I know I'm not going to do anything to this number except for do a cleanup. So I'm going to put 62 here. I could also write it as 62 like this. Or if I wanted a 0 for every number, I could do it like this. Okay? All right, great. So we've tried one on our own. Let's try another one on our own. Okay, this is 33 and 667 thousandths. And I want you to round to the nearest hundredth. Again, stop, pause, try to do it on your own, and then start up again and see if you got the correct answer. Okay, so let's look at the number again. So I know that the first value to the right of the decimal is the tenth, and the second value is the hundredth. So I'm going to underline the one in the hundredth category, or place value, and then I'm going to draw an arrow to the next number. Now if we remember our rules, the first one we look at is to see, is the number greater or equal to 5? And I look at the 7 and I know that that is greater than 5. So if it is greater than 5, I know I need to add 1 to the number we're rounding. So on this one I would rewrite it like this: 33 and 67 hundredths. If you got that, you got the correct answer. Another way that you could write it that would still be valid would be 33 and 670 thousandths. And that would also be correct. So if you got it correct, great. If you didn't, then go ahead and go back to the beginning of this and watch it again and try again and see if you get it correct. If you do, you are done with rounding and we can move on to the next topic.